On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss innovations of GameFound, Kickstarter, and we even do a little deep dive into the use of AI and how that can impact you as a creator negatively. Let's jump into it. Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by HeroTime Manufacturing. That is HeroTime, the numeral1.com. Hirschgleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. HeroTime, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out HeroTime, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Bring your pretty face to my ad.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I'm your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean. And today, he waved at the camera, sort of. Yep, he said 5 at the camera. Today we're going to be talking about some news roundup and a healthy discussion on AI and how people use it well and how people think they're using it well and actually just creating AI slop. We're going to talk about what makes a project sloppy and why AI often makes for sloppy, low quality projects that nobody wants. And then ways that you can use AI well. But first, I think we want to talk about news. We've had a number of different things happen lately that we've just yet to cover on the podcast in detail, and we wanted to address them. It felt like none of these topics were, even though they sounded awesome and like, oh wow, it just was a little like not as big a deal as people might think, and so we figured it would be good to come back and touch on these. So where do you want to start, Sean?
So we can talk about the Indiegogo acquisition by GameFound, which happened a couple of weeks back now, but it's interesting, certainly, and it's maybe addressing one of the concerns we had, which was outside traffic. One of the kind of big advantages of Kickstarter is that it's not just tabletop games, and if you had something that was thematically relevant to other people on the platform, let's say it's a hiking game, then you can tap into that demographic of people who've maybe backed some type of camping or hiking equipment. And that was one of the advantages of Kickstarter. So I do think that GameFound's listening and that they realized that that was a strength, but also a weakness of their platform. And I think their way to remedy this is by acquiring Indiegogo. But from what I can see from the community, especially in the comments of their updates, which we include in the show notes, is that people are kind of seeing this as bittersweet. It just doesn't seem like it's something that is going to help people who back regularly on GameFound. It's more of something to help the creators. And then a lot of people didn't seem to be too happy with Indiegogo. Apparently, it was sort of developed a reputation as being a place where people went when their projects were kicked off Kickstarter. So it became a bit of a scam site. So a lot of scams and a lot of people complaining that they'd been scammed there and that Indiegogo hadn't done anything. So I think in terms of maybe the public consciousness of the opinions of Indiegogo, there's maybe a bit of a bitter taste in people's mouth because of maybe the past reputation of Indiegogo. So hopefully they can, leverage this extra traffic accordingly. So I think it's a positive move. I don't think it's necessarily bad. But I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I guess Kickstarter has about 150 employees, last I checked at least, and GameFound doesn't have 150. But with the acquisition of Indiegogo, they are going to have, I don't know, actually, it just seemed like Indiegogo was, fading into the rearview mirror as like the major players were driving away from it. They were leaving it in their dust. And GameFound through Indiegogo a lifeline. It makes sense because they now have so Kickstarter released, so GameFound released an update saying we're the biggest platform ever for games, and Kickstarter fired shots back saying no you're not, and we have people who back games across categories. And I think that GameFound bought Indiegogo for a couple of reasons, but because Kickstarter actually had that notch over GameFound, where they were able to say we had it was a really powerful stat. It's like 40% or so of Kickstarter's funding comes from tabletop games. And they said that related to tabletop games, they kind of defended themselves and they said over 70% of the people who back projects on Kickstarter have backed a tabletop game. So it's not like just 40% of our people care about tabletop. It's actually more like 70%, which, Kickstarter gets a ton of organic traffic and whatnot. And that's really the major thing that Kickstarter's always had over GameFound. So them saying that, hey, it's not just this slice of the pie that's eligible to be your customer. It's actually a much larger slice of the pie than you thought. In my opinion, that was the most powerful statistic that Kickstarter was able to throw out. That was, I'll use the phrase undeniable, but it's like, yeah, that is definitely a feather in Kickstarter's cap. And so GameFound, I think, read that line and they're like, we're buying Indiegogo. And they snagged Indiegogo in some in a deal that would give them access to technology and books and whatever else Indiegogo does that is adjacent, or it just is crowdfunding but not board game or tabletop game related, so that Indiegogo can supplement GameFound's traffic with additional categories. So if, I would imagine that GameFound, in fact, actually, the CEO, Marcin, said that it's specifically because of the organic traffic that they want to integrate GameFound projects on Indiegogo and feature them for people who are browsing that website or have just backed a project and whatnot. And that's really great news for everybody on GameFound when it's up and running. And then, of course, Indiegogo, they can cross-pollinate with GameFound. But from what I understand, GameFound is going to remain tabletop specific, but Indiegogo is going to have access to GameFound projects, or rather, it's going to display GameFound projects as well. So it's definitely a win for GameFound if they can get this recorded well, because more exposure to relevant audiences from is something creators really want. And so I'm just not sure it's going to make the difference that they hope it makes, but it all depends. I mean, how much involvement is the GameFound team and the Awaken Realms team going to have, like their programming staff? How much involvement are they going to actually have with the Indiegogo website? Like if they could rebuild the Indiegogo website from the ground up, I'm sure that it would be really amazing and very, very well developed. I mean, they have a really impressive team, or rather, they made something very impressive with GameFound. Technologically, it far surpasses Kickstarter, but then the user base is just, Kickstarter dominates in regard to user base. And it's they're working on narrowing the gap. And we which we've talked about, like, I think internally I have run through some calculations on the podcast in the past that estimates that the relevant traffic from Kickstarter is not like orders of magnitude larger than GameFound. It's actually only like 4 to 5 times more traffic on Kickstarter, because you have to factor in varying, that there are many more projects on Kickstarter than GameFound, and that the large amounts of traffic are divided among more projects. It's a little harder to get exposure on Kickstarter and so on. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's definitely an interesting move, and I'm glad GameFound is making moves.
Well, it's certainly putting a fire under Kickstarter. I was talking to one of our clients recently, and this person was saying that in the 10 years that they've been doing Kickstarters, they've worked on some pretty big projects. He says, Kickstarter's never reached out to them. They would try to help them, but this year was the first time that they wanted to meet up with them and, buy them lunch at Gen Con and kind of have a chat with them. So it kind of feels like, yeah. So he was just saying it, like, obviously it's making an impact if there is this kind of push towards kind of maybe taking customer service a bit better, which I think GameFound has really shone in that department compared to Kickstarter. So they are trying to remedy that. And I think the other thing that you see GameFound now doing is trying to maneuver into the tabletop role-playing game space, where they've predominantly tackled basically the Awakened Realms audience, to kind of big campaign miniatures type board games. And now they're obviously trying to expand to other areas of the tabletop industry, where Kickstarter has really cemented their basis in the market with tabletop role-playing games. So I know they have a big push now to get publishers onto GameFound with their tabletop role-playing games. So yeah, I think it's kind of like the space race.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it. And GameFound
is
is Russia, and Kickstarter is the USA, and everyone expects Kickstarter to win, but GameFound is really surprising people. And in the end, we've got an international space station with a Russian and an American astronaut. Hopefully they become friends. I don't know, but it feels like overall this is a good thing right now for creators. Just no matter which side you are on, if you prefer to launch your project on GameFound, there are reasons that you might want to do that I would advocate for. Or, if you launch a project on Kickstarter, there are also reasons you might do that I would advocate for too. So like, we kind of, as a marketing company, we kind of sit in the middle saying, I'm fine if you go to GameFound or if you go to Kickstarter, we can help you either way. And there's not really like, I'm not secretly in the back room telling my favorite clients, "Yo, use this platform instead." But we go over pros and cons and other things like that. And it's just one of those things. I feel like the best games, I don't know. I guess I don't even need to. It's just like a whole nother ball of wax, and we want to get into news and whatnot. But basically, the short version of what I was going to digress for an hour about was that GameFound and Kickstarter, there are reasons that you might want to use each one, and they're both good. But Kickstarter is catching up in certain ways that really matter. Like, we interviewed Asher McClanahan a little while back talking about what Kickstarter has been up to in regard to, gathering customer feedback and making some meaningful changes and technological advancements to help creators. I remember when I started my first Kickstarter project, this is back in 2020, I got onto, I created a project, and every time that I would save, it would add like random spaces, additional spaces in between every image that I would use. Like every image and a new paragraph, it would just add like 2 random spaces above and below. Like, why is this happening? And then I would have to go into the editor and remove them. That evidently had been around forever. And it took a long time to just to fix like stupid little bugs in the editor. But now, in the last, really since the new CEO, Everett Taylor, took over, they've made meaningful attempts to make forward progress. And part of that was, I don't know what he did, if it was cleaning house and then bringing in people that were focused on making forward progress or whatever. But one of the people they brought in was Asher McClanahan. Eventually, after a few, we joke about the games master over at Kickstarter being like the games master from Hunger Games. I don't know if we joked on air about that or not, but I joked about that with him. Like, his predecessor ate some poison berries or something, and he has some big shoes to fill. And anyway, it really seems like he's thriving in that role. But I think Kickstarter realized, we need an Alex Radcliffe, because Alex is doing such a great job talking to creators and being a solid liaison and whatnot, that they needed somebody that could also do that. Anyway, I think that it's good to see. And on the topic of Kickstarter, there's something new that we've been seeing in regard to technology updates that I don't know if they've talked about, but we've seen. You want to go into that, Sean, regard to the pre-launch stuff?
Well, in terms of Kickstarter mimicking some of the advancements in technology that GameFound has pushed through, it looks like they're now introducing pre-launch updates. So that's one of the advantages of GameFound currently, was that if you gain a follower, you could communicate with them via email updates before you launched. And this is why we've always favored email capture, because you can do this on Kickstarter. You could gain a follower, and that was it. You got a notification when they launched. But there's a project here, Don't Starve, the board game, which has nearly 50,000 followers. Huge. So it'd be very interesting to see how this does. But they've just released an update as of today. So they haven't launched yet, and they've got this update. So that this might be beta. It might be just because it's particularly large IP and they kind of rolled this out to special clients, or it might be for everyone. But it does certainly seem to be coming down the pipeline. So it might change how the kind of marketing around Kickstarters work now, because if you can send updates, there's maybe less of an incentive to capture emails because you can email them either way. Probably particularly more useful for people who've gone to Kickstarter a couple of times, and email list maybe isn't as necessary as like a first-time creator where you are trying to build your entire audience from scratch, and the kind of risk of failure is very high. So you want to kind of guarantee that you've at least captured your audience attention. So even if you do fail, you can relaunch and leverage your email list. So interesting stuff. I think it might change how we might even, as a company, market. If everything's moving towards this system, we might, instead of creating landing pages, we might focus on the pre-launch page, trying to make that look. I think one of the problems that all of them have is currently on these pre-launch pages, when you scroll to the bottom, there's nowhere to follow. Nowhere to follow. Mm-hmm. So you have to scroll all the way back up, and that's a huge disadvantage. You can't even like put an anchor link or something. So they need to have an ability where you can maybe embed the follow button, that even at the bottom of the page you can. Because right now I still think email, in terms of acquiring the attention of your potential audience, would be better than directing to a pre-launch page.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
Yeah, in regard to that, I still, the Andrew today, if this tech was in for everybody and we could do pre-launch and just focus on the pre-launch page of Kickstarter and have updates that went to all the followers, which, by the way, I'm not sure where the updates go. If like the updates go to all the followers of the project, that would be really cool. GameFound does that. That's one of the big things that they do. I'm not sure. I mean, the update actually just came out today. So with 47,000 and change followers, this Don't Starve the Board Game campaign has like 153 hearts on the update that came out today. So who knows exactly what ratio of followers will produce what amount of hearts or, what amount of likes. But if the updates go to all the followers, I think that that's awesome. And it's anything that allows me to talk to my people more often or easier or in more in different capacities is a good thing. So if I can send to use an example that everybody's familiar with, I can send a Facebook post. I make a Facebook post in my group. I can make a personal Facebook post for friends and family that are following. I can send a Discord notification to, on the Discord server that I'm building. I can send an email notification or an email like a newsletter to all of my email list. And now if I can send or we'll soon be able to send a Kickstarter update to all of my project followers, those are great ways to pepper people a bunch of times. We call it touching in marketing, where you have like 5, 6, 7, 8 touches to your audience, but that is going to really help, because if it comes from different platforms, it's not annoying. Whereas if I sent 7 emails, it'd be very annoying. And so I think that overall this is a net positive. So with all that being said, I feel like as a creator right now that is managing my audience after a Kickstarter. So I have a Kickstarter that I have finished and I'm actively working on, providing updates and developing and whatnot, which is Deliverance Council of the Fallen expansion. And I have 3,400 backers there. I also have a bunch of pre-orders. I want to say like 400 more people that have pre-ordered the game, and then I have an email list of like 10,000 people. So the problem that I run into right now is like my Kickstarter updates are only going to 3,400 people. Oh, well, let's put it a different way. They're only going to a third of my list, only a third of the people that I have access to. And that's actually one thing that I run into on the regular, that my followers are not notified of updates unless they backed that Kickstarter. So it's a problem because I'm not able to just add more people into that list. And so I have to actually send emails in order to unless I just don't care about the 6,500 people on my email list that didn't back the Kickstarter, which they might be a bunch of different reasons, but they're generally maybe 1,000 people out of that 10,000 on my email list are inactive. So maybe something like 12%, maybe 1,200 people are inactive on that list, which means that I have a huge chunk of people that are interested in what I have to say, that open every email or open every other email. And so I've actually been running into a problem where, and Sean, you helped me with those deliverance emails. I haven't been that great about sending them in a timely manner, or really, like I want to spend more time on them. And because I don't have any time, I have pushed them off and pushed them off. And I find myself maybe not even sending an email during a month, that I should have. Or, I get to the very end of the month and then hurry up and send one. And, just to try to keep that thing going. But it feels like email marketing, as I've reflected on it, just for me as a personal creator, email marketing is very important. Very important. And even if Kickstarter or like GameFound already existed, even if Kickstarter or GameFound gives me the ability to kind of manage an audience and a community there, it should never supersede your email marketing list. And part of the reason for that we've covered in the past on the podcast is that you don't want to be beholden to a company to like maintain access to your list. So Kickstarter, on their platform, you have followers and you have backers. To be able to communicate with those backers or project followers is entirely reliant on Kickstarter's platform staying up. Now, my email list, if let's say MailChimp, which is who I use right now, and they're very expensive, and I recommend MailerLite if you're wondering what email marketing program to use. If MailChimp was like, hey, I don't like your face, I can actually take my email list to somewhere else and start sending emails. I can go to Substack, I can go to MailerLite, I can go wherever. And so that's not something you can do. You cannot get the information of your followers on Kickstarter or GameFound and take them to another platform. By design, you can't. So it would, if people, I guess the point of all of this is to say that if people will exclusively say, I don't need email marketing anymore, I'm just going to use Kickstarter. Number one, you can't take your audience with you. So it might help you today, but it won't help you overall as a company. If there's any change, it could be catastrophic, and you could lose 3/4 of your audience if you had to switch platforms. For example, if you had to go to GameFound all of a sudden because your Kickstarter account got locked, I don't, just in an extreme circumstance, then you wouldn't be able to take the followers, right? So I am an advocate of making sure that you own everything and that you maintain ownership of everything. So, your emails, your Facebook and Discord server, and other things like that. And so everything else is very helpful, but because you can't own your Kickstarter followers, you can only leverage them, which is another platform owns those followers, they know the email address of every one of those followers. They have the information. They're Kickstarter's customer. So Kickstarter has that information. You need to earn that information by, converting them from a follower into a backer. But I think that it's just important to maintain your email marketing list even still. Now that being said, I love that, if it seems like this is in beta right now, but if everyone can send updates via, to their followers, that's huge. Really, really important.
Well, the other important thing is that in the updates is a comment section. So what you could start developing is that community space where you send this pre-launch update, and that's the kind of basis by which everyone is chatting and communicating with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also quite interesting, is that it's not just update with comments, which is interesting because traditionally people could only comment on the project if they had backed, but this is obviously in the pre-launch stage, so anyone can comment.
Yeah, and it's funny because on the comment page, I can tell this is very new. And Asher, if you're listening, it says only backers can post comments, and it's like, well, the project is not live, so I can't back it. So I'm gonna hit this notify me on launch button, and let's see what happens. Reload and just see if I can comment now. Yep, I can comment. So you should say only followers can post comments. So I do think that it would be great if we could have like even post campaign followers or something, if you really wanted to make something that I can use all the time. One of the biggest complaints that I get out of my Deliverance community is I post huge updates on the last day of every month. And because the updates are so involved, I can really only do like a roundup of the updates I post on Kickstarter for email marketing. And that's one of the conflicts that I've been finding is like my email marketing, it doesn't give people new information because I spend like a whole month of work and then on my project, and then 8 hours of time or 6 hours of time, no exaggeration, compiling information to share with people on Kickstarter, for the end of the month update. And everybody really looks forward to the end of the month update. But the problem is that only 3,400 people get it. However, those 3,400 people are my most active, engaged fans. So when I send an email that just says, in case you missed it, well, the 3,400 people that are my most hardcore fans didn't miss it. They've been following updates. And so I'll get emails every time just like, hey, is there any new information? Like, why are you sending me this email if there's no new information? And so that's like, what do I use email marketing for that all I want is just for when somebody opens a piece of content that I create, whether it's an email or a Kickstarter update or whatever, I want them to say, I'm glad I opened that. That was worth my time.
Why haven't you moved everything to email marketing and just maybe your last update saying, hey, we're going to move everything to email updates now, subscribe here if you want to get updates of this project, and just kind of abandon the Kickstarter update and just focus on your email then?
It probably would be a healthy thing for the project. And that's something that I need to really kind of think through because it's not something that is quite so easy to solve. I do think that everybody needs to figure out like why do you use each platform? Like each platform that you use, and what purpose does it serve? And I can say that every platform is useful, but if you leverage it to the maximum, like there are certain platforms that I just don't use for the purpose of like marketing my games, and others that I use sometimes, and some much more than others. So I have a Facebook group that I leverage like crazy. I share updates, I ask questions and whatnot. I have a Discord community that's very active for Deliverance that I will ask questions and share all the time, just stuff about the game and whatnot. And I really don't use Board Game Geek, even though I should. I'm a lurker. I'm a longtime user of Board Game Geek, and I am very proud that Deliverance is like the top, like number one rated religious themed game on that website. But I think that it's just not something that I have time to do. So like I don't even, maybe I should, but I don't even share that there's an update on the board game on BGG forums because I already share that in Discord, on Facebook, via email. It's like another thing is just, it's you have to format it properly and everything. And it's like just not like we're not super active there. And
is Board Game Geek even that big anyway? In terms of it, I know people kind of use Board Game Geek more as a database rather than a kind of community hub. I don't know. There's probably a very small group of like very focused people on Board Game Geek, but in terms of reaching lots of people, I don't necessarily know if it's the best place to be.
Well, I will say this, that when, for my company and for others, many of our clients, like Galactic Cruise, when Galactic Cruise posted that, their box cover art, they were like the #1 project on BGG. And that, that really helped a lot in regard to like their follower count and stuff like that, just by posting the art and box cover. It was a Vincent Dutrait box cover, I think. And it was, it just got really, a lot of people really hyped, and they were like, what's Galactic Cruise? So there's definitely a significantly sized audience that you can reach there. And even for myself, like when I released Deliverance, it hit #1 hotness on BGG during December of like 2023. And we sold like 20, I want to say the number of sales we made in one day was like maxed out at like 23 or 25. So we would sell between 15 to 25 copies of Deliverance at 100 to 150 or $180 a pop, depending on like, all in, without even trying. And it was incredible. So while we were #1, I think, when we were within the top 10, I felt it. And when we were #1, it just was like a huge, huge increase. So there's definitely a reason to use BGG, but it's like there's only so much brain power, time, effort, and energy that I can dedicate to anything. And I've got to, figure it out. Like, what am I going to cut? Even though things are valuable and useful, what am I going to maintain? What am I going to cut? And I think BGG for me is like, I have a season that I'll use BGG like for a project again and encourage people and whatnot to use BGG. But I don't, just because the community hasn't caught fire there as much, I'm just focusing on where it has. One other area that I don't use that a lot of people do is Reddit. So Reddit, I've actually had success on Reddit. I've written posts that have become like, some of at one time I wrote a post that was in the entrepreneur subreddit that was ranked at like the 4th highest post of all time in that subreddit. So I've had success there. Reddit's actually become a bigger site since that happened, but so it's like far down there, but I still get messages to this day, like 10 years later, or almost 10 years later, about what, about that post that I wrote. And, it definitely helped a lot in regard to like the backlink that I was able to earn to our website, but it feels like a lot of effort for the amount of time I have and the return that it provides. And Reddit's its own ecosystem. Like if you go in there as a new person being like, hey guys, want to back my project? You just get downvoted into oblivion and nobody hears. So so I guess it's you do have to pick and choose. Absolutely have to pick and choose.
So one thing that we've noticed with our company in terms of leads coming in, we've been getting a lot of projects that are utilizing AI, but in the worst possible ways. Essentially, they're just AI slop projects, and it's very clear that very minimal work has gone into this, and it's just done on a budget, and it's got that AI look. And oh boy, I don't know what it's going to do for the future. I have a tendency to think that people think that this is going to transform the creative space. I actually think a lot of people just end up rejecting or resisting it.
Yep.
For example, the prevalence of the internet has actually made people become to value face-to-face interactions more, and there's almost been a rejection of the internet and the kind of Internet of Things and everything connected to the internet at all times. Like your toaster doesn't need to be connected to the internet, and you don't need a subscription, for your toaster. And that's where everything's kind of heading towards. So I have a suspicion that with the kind of rise of AI, people actually just reject it. I think as soon as they're going to see, this is AI, or this even has the hint of being AI generated, it's just going to not for me, move on. So I don't necessarily think it's going to produce the results people think. I don't think we're going to get to a stage where, people are writing books. They've got huge catalogs of books that they've created with AI, and I think it cheapens human ingenuity. it's kind of like the smartphone didn't destroy photographers. It's just, it obviously just made that skill set a bit more narrow, but the people who are doing photography are really good at it, and you're already paying for that service and skill. And there's no comparison between a professional photographer and your iPhone, for example. It's just not going to get the same. So I think it's probably the same with AI, where some people will use it, but I think a lot of people, when it comes to creating a business and having things which are professional, I think we're going to start seeing a rejection of it.
Yeah, just like in the 1900s with Tammany Hall and the big monopolies, you have oligarchs that just want people to act like sheep. If only we would act like sheep, then we would be so easy to control. And AI is the exact same way, where AI is something that is an incredibly powerful tool, far beyond us. It's going to launch our nukes one day, and just like Terminator style. It's not going to be good. I could totally see like an iRobot thing happening eventually, and
Or
all those.
technocracy that's just governed by AI, like all your laws, that'd be horrible. Just imagine.
So, but I do think that people are sassy and unpredictable, and they cannot easily be controlled at all. So you can't, especially me being an American and a Texan American, it's like, you can't tell me what to do. You think you tell me what to do? I'm going to do exactly opposite of what you told me, just because you're trying to control me. And
But we thought of
that is
that.
actually, and that nature is inside all people. So I think that it's we can tell. It's just like any form of advertising. We can tell when something isn't right. We just tend to shun and turn off things that are not actually legit. Even though AI has a ton of use and value, it also I find that people tend to reject dependence on AI. Like they're already kind of fighting against that, and so while it can be very useful in many ways, it also an over reliance on AI. I mean, I don't want to say never say never, but an over reliance on AI is not going to win you more fans. It's actually going to hurt your stock in the eyes of people, and it's going to limit you in regard to your skill set, and it's going to limit you in regard to like your ceiling, like how far can you reach. If you're using AI, you're actually going to unfortunately limit yourself in acquiring new people that are interested in your ideas and that kind of thing. And I think that we're going to go increasingly further toward influencers. We're going to have we already can see micro influencers, people that are influential in their circles of influence. That's always been a thing. You've always had the person that is like, oh, let's go over to whoever's house, or let's do this thing that like for me, I always ran poker nights. So if we did a LAN, everyone bring your computers to my house or whatever. Those are there are people that generally are kind of like the hub of the friend group, and that often kind of take the lead. I think that in the same way, there are influencers that are online or whatever that cause others that make others want to follow them. So Jamie Stegmaier is an easy example of somebody in the tabletop space that when he makes a product, people want it. I think that when you have a nobody that writes a book that is supposedly some amazing story, and then you're like, okay, this is supposedly an amazing fantasy story by some nobody, but then there's Brandon Sanderson, and whatever he writes, is good because it's Brandon Sanderson. I think that people are going to be more reliant on established names of people than ever before. So I think that if you work through a very small group of people to earn a reputation, you get 300 backers on a Kickstarter project, it's going to show others that you can be trusted. Whatever you create is going to be genuine and a work of art that I can it's easier to trust. So that's I don't know. I think that people are going to run into a lot of problems with an over reliance on AI. They're going to be an unskilled worker that is using a platform that's far beyond them to understand and control, and it produces slop in the end. Is what happens. So
But yeah, I agree. We kind of see this with, I was just talking to my wife actually today, and we were talking about how everything's devolving. And an example of this is programming, where you think of the original Pokemon. I think that can actually fit spot the size of a picture, and it's amazing to kind of know how much can be done just with this kind of older technology, and the limitations of the hardware meant that the programming had to be on point. And now you look at games today, and they're just so bloated, and you're talking about like 150 gigs for like Call of Duty or something crazy. It's ridiculous. Like, what's happening? It's just so much bloat, and like even Windows, the editions of Windows are getting worse and worse and worse. It's like they're trying to just spy on you more and more, and there's so much bloat. And you also see this with YouTube content. I think there was a time where YouTube was genuinely entertaining. Now there's just so much slop and reaction content. It's like whoever can race to the bottom fastest. And yeah, I think the result of this is not people aren't going to continue to embrace it. They will just reject it eventually. It'll just be a rejection of it. And we kind of see this even with like society. So I think like an example of this would be the USSR. It's this totalitarian regime that's very kind of boot on the neck. And there was no army that invaded Russia and brought that regime down. Eventually just died itself, dissipated. You can even say the same with the Roman Empire, where it just became its own, it fell to its own demise because of its opulence. And I think this is what happens it's the nature of humanity, is that some things get popular. Once it gets popular, it becomes wealthy. When it gets wealthy, it gets lazy, and it just eventually deteriorates and destroys itself. So yeah, I think we're sort of at the
like
stage
World of Warcraft.
Where well, that's an example. Another example, it was, had its peak, and it's just been steadily downhill. Now it's completely unrecognizable to the original game that was 10 years ago. So I do think that people will reject this, and they will find other things to occupy their time and their attention, and they will support things which do not use these kind of levers and pillars, because it's, the content that has been created with that has been tarnished.
Yeah. Whenever I'm watching a short on YouTube or something like that, reaction videos don't stop me immediately from watching, because sometimes the actual video itself, even though there's some dude that's like, like making a stupid face and like nodding, I don't care about some dude that's nodding. But I do care about the content. So if it's genuinely interesting content that is relevant to my interest, I want to watch it. But I'll tell you the thing.
But I guarantee you, if you just read a book, it would actually be more enlightening than listening to some reaction content of something. So I feel that
way more. Yes, way more so.
Even the internet itself has just given people a cheapened version of true information. And I really feel that a lot of the internet could really be removed, and there wouldn't be much change to anything, because it's so frivolous and there's not much substance. I almost feel like I imagine we're actually going to start seeing a kind of return to physical books and people just reading books, because what you would spend 3 hours on YouTube, you probably read about 15 minutes if you just sat down and read a book.
Well, the rise of audiobooks kind of support what it is that you're saying. I will say that people are used to convenience, and I think that any return from technology is not going to happen, but we're going to see adaptations of technology that make it easier for people to be more personable. And I think that's also why board games and tabletop RPGs and things have experienced such a rise in interest. I mean, Magic the Gathering and their card sets and whatnot, like you just have a ton of people getting into the set now, and a lot of different things. You've got a lot of people that are really excited about getting together in person to play a thing, and or whatever. I think
that's
that
physical.
audiobooks
There's
are big.
not a subscription. I think that's another thing. People are just so sick of everything being a subscription.
Yeah. So yeah, but one thing that I was going to say is that something that kills my interest faster than anything when I watch a video is when I hear an AI generated voice, and it can sound totally real, but if it's like something that is telling me what's about to happen in the video, immediately turn it off. I'm like, watch what this person said when that person did this, and it's like, all right, I'm immediately out. I feel like the content, I just want to see the content. I don't want to see or hear what you think about the content. A lot of the time, I mean, any, old show or 60 Minutes or a Netflix documentary or something that's about like some, let's say like, there's a haunted house and you're, like what makes it haunted. It'll stretch like a 30-second answer into a 1 hour show. It's like, oh, one time a guy was walking in there and the boards creaked and he got scared and ran outside. But then it's gonna stretch that stupid story into like 1 hour, and it's like a story as old as television itself. Like just tell me what's relevant. Or save me a click, just tell me what happened, where people will share news that is, 9 paragraphs of AI generated, junk right after the first paragraph, which was actually written by a human. It's like, 9 paragraph or 8 more paragraphs of reflection. It's like, I can immediately tell as a consumer when I'm just being BS'd. And I think that's something that when I was going through school, I had to write my own papers, and there were clever ways to BS your way through a school paper. But now with AI, just like write me a prompt on this, include 3 sentences and a thesis statement and whatever,
Well, that's
But
actually one of the problems I think with education is it kind of rewarded the regurgitation of information,
yeah,
and it has led to its own demise. Where yes, now people can just use machines to regurgitate information. There we go. That's what you wanted for you. That was the checkbox in the exam.
yep.
Well, I think historically the idea of knowledge acquisition was always through some type of following a master. It was like a master apprentice situation. It was learning practical skills there in the field. And even within academia, like a lot of the institutions here in England, for example, Cambridge, Oxford, were originally seminaries, and they were kind of purposed as places where anyone could enter originally. And they weren't sort of these elitist places. They were a place for the betterment of the nation, of the country folk and the people, and really a place to store public information knowledge, but particularly around philosophy and theology.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's you're kind of seeing the systems destroy themselves. So yeah, I don't really have too much sympathy for academia because I feel like it's maybe
Yeah,
I'm maybe a bit too cynical, but I feel like it's kind of created its own problem
yeah,
by
yeah.
rewarding this type of regurgitation of information and kind of checkboxing and diplomas and degrees, which is, I think, being completely
Yep.
What's the word I'm looking for? It's gone too
Co-opted.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you can get a degree for anything at this point, and I don't think you necessarily need to go to university for your basket
There was
weaving.
always this adage of the A students are managed by B students, which work for the C students that own the company. And I remember, like one of my big mentors is my mom. She, my mom and dad are both pretty successful. My dad is a civil engineer, and my mom was an F student that went through high school and barely made it through high school and just wasn't at all interested in school. She got married the day after she turned 18 and went, off with my dad, and there I am 5 years later or 6 years later, something like that. But she actually, I remember as a kid, she went to community college, which is a junior college. It's like not a full university, but it's like a local post high school or post whatever it is. I don't know what y'all call it over in the UK, but it's like higher education. So I remember her as a kid going through algebra, and she was having such a hard time with algebra, and she would study so hard, and she cried when she got a B, because it was just, she got I think a B plus or something, and she cried. Then she made it into a 4-year university and finished her degree. Then she got a master's degree, and before she even did any of that, she started a business, like, because she, my dad was going through hard times. She started to watch kids at and do like some childcare in our house, and it was based on need. It's like, that is the best driver, is like, if you need something, then you will find a way to get it. Like if you need to eat, that is something, versus if like you would like to eat a filet mignon from Ruth Chris, or if you would like to eat one of Gordon Ramsay's, famous, whatever those things are called, basically it's like a fillet that's wrapped in this phyllo dough or something, and super good. I'll remember it later, but totally not important. But maybe you might not be as motivated to go out and eat something like that, but I promise you're going to eat. You're going to find a way to eat because you need to. So for my mom, she needed to find a way to make an extra money because my dad's was going through a really difficult time, like a drought for construction and whatnot. And so he didn't have much work. And so my mom started a little daycare in the house. And that eventually became a daycare that like was so busy that she was having to turn people away. And she said one day there was this doctor that was standing in her house that was demanding that she take his kid. And he was like, anything you need, I'll make it happen. Anything you need. How much money do you need? How much, what can I do? Like, as far as time and this and that, she's like, she's so busy she's full with kids and she can't take this guy's kid, but he really wanted that, right? And there were others that were like that too. So based on the demand, she's like, I need to hire somebody. I need to bring in a helper. So she brought in a part-time helper, and that grew to like 4 part-time helpers and a full-time helper, and it just expanded there. And based on what's already working, she was able to open a whole preschool, which is now like 10 preschools. And they're very successful. And then she went to college. I was like, dude, this lady is like legit, she's very successful. No one would believe that she like barely graduated high school. And so it's a crazy, success story from somebody that I think is just had to deal with life and survive. I think that we can be very, very complacent, and I think that we can look for the easy way out. And I find that when people come to our marketing agency and say, I have a project, they always think it's the best project, and you should think that because you made it, you should be proud of it. But when I see that this project was made with AI, the art's made with AI, there's there's no rule book yet. It's immediately I'm like, this is low effort. It's probably never been play tested in front of live people before. If it was maybe if the friend said that it was good, and now here we are with them thinking that they're going to make $1 million with this genius idea. And it's the AI images that I see are just the surface of laziness that I expect from this project. The project is not innovative. It doesn't do something special that other games don't do. It doesn't really need to exist. Like that's like the harsh reality is like, if you make an AI project that's not innovative, why does this even need to exist in the world? Because there are other things that exist that do everything your project does better. Why does your project need to exist? That's something that you as a creator need to think about. It must exist because X. Like, I wish a game like this existed, but it doesn't, so I made one. And you can backfill in like what specifically makes it innovative, as long as the thing that you wished for doesn't exist and you made it. But you can't even begin to say that when you create it via AI. It's like, I'll give you like a contrast with a little counter example. I'm working on a game we're codenaming Angelcraft. It's like Warcraft 3, where you have heroes and you build an army and you fight against opposing forces and whatnot. And there's not really a game like that exists that does things in the way that I wanted it to do. Cloud Spire is a great example, and there are other games that do some elements well. There's Guardians of Atlantis and others that are like MOBAs, but nothing that really scratches the itch that I wish could be scratched. So I'm making this thing, and we're using some AI art as placeholder because art is it's cooler if instead of using like a hand-drawn like stick figure or using some clip art that I purchased off of some photography website. Like we're just using something that's a little more relevant to like the angels and whatnot. If I don't have like I don't have any buildings or I have a building in the game that I don't have art for. So I went to Midjourney and had an art piece made for it. But that's just like a placeholder so that I can have something. And that type of thing's okay. But I would never bring that to a marketing company and say, now I want you to market this for me because it's not ready. It's not ready to be commercially seen yet. It's ready to play test, but not ready for like selling. And so if I have like any AI in a game, it's only for it's like if I were borrowing someone some random art offline that I found and I cut it and I put it in the background in a Photoshop document or something. That's not something that's okay to do if you're selling a product. You don't steal someone's art and profit off of someone's art without their permission. But if you're just doing something personally, there's nothing wrong with that. And I know some people will be like, "Oh, well, I don't know if it's safe or not." If you're freaking out about it, then don't do it. But there's nothing wrong with using something personally that you are not profiting from. So that includes AI. There's no difference to me. So if I fiddle around with images and I try to get like an art style that I enjoy, it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna go for like we're gonna try anime art, and oh, that's kind of cool. We're gonna do like Voltron style anime, and now I don't like that. We're gonna do like a more realistic style, and maybe that's kind of cool. That's great. You're testing and experimenting. You're basically like for me, we save probably, if an angel takes like 100 hours to do in regard to like art, an artist's time, we save like 30% of that time by not having to sketch. So sometimes we'll have to sketch a full character to get it right. And then other times we'll actually just do like an AI generated images and say like, what do you think about like this kind of shield and that kind of sword and this kind of halo and whatever. And so we'll use those almost like sketching samples,
You
which
don't just
can save
use
quite
it
a lot of
like
time.
a Google search where you do Google
Yeah,
search and you get references, and then you
right,
can compile those references to create a unique piece of art.
right. But
And
that's all
into it,
just effort in research and development. I think AI is great for research.
yeah. And I think there's an element of the process of learning new skills stretches you as a person and makes you more competent, and it improves the quality of your work. And to go back to this idea in terms of just academics and in education, William Stevenson was a Canadian spy. He sort of headed up the British security coordination in World War II. He was codenamed Intrepid by Winston Churchill. And he had no formal education. He was just a farm boy who read lots of books and kind of tinkered with technology. Eventually, he lands up, at the head of the intelligentsia during World War II. And I think that's just a prime example of this idea of taking your education seriously and constantly trying to learn new skills. So people listen to this podcast, I think it's really important that you try to become the best marketer you can. Even if your intention is to hire experts, it's always good to widen your skill set. I think there's a danger where we move to a society where everyone's just reliant on other experts. That could become very problematic. I think everyone needs to be decently competent in a lot of different areas, but then obviously specialize in one thing. But you certainly don't want to go into any industry with being completely ignorant on that particular topic. So it's always good to develop your skills. And I think this has been reflected in people's work. You can have a high quality work, and it's going to show because I think anyone who's writing a book, has done lots of research on a particular topic and has compiled this, and it can often show. And I think the quality of your work will speak for itself if you have done your diligence and kind of developing
Right.
yourself first. And I think
Yeah.
you rob yourself of those opportunities if you just kind of constantly rely on AI or automation or something else. I think it
Yeah.
just creates.
AI is not a shortcut to competency.
Yeah. I think it's just this is why the term AI slop has become a thing, because it's so easy, anyone can do it, and it just results in work that's frankly lazy.
Yep. Yeah. One thing I think that's really cool though, one way that we use AI that I think is amazing. So I have one of the actually, the person that uses AI on my team is my artist. So when I say uses AI, he will paint something. Like we have our deliverance angels. So we'll use a deliverance angel in a prompt on Midjourney, which is the like an AI art that we use for like research and development. So we'll use a picture of an angel, and then
That
another
he's drawn.
picture. Yeah, exactly. That he's fully painted with no AI or anything. And so we're kind of training the AI on our own art, which is cool. But so the image we include in the prompt, and then we'll include an art style. It's like, give me an image of an angel that is of similar art style to this, and with a fully described prompt. And then we get something that's like, okay, this is like close to what I would want to do. So we'll take like we used this this last week for an umbral imp. We have imps of wrath in our base game of deliverance. We have what used to be called abyssal hounds, are a unit in the expansion. We changed to umbral hounds. So now we're adding umbral imps, and we wanted like a meddling imp or imp of wrath that was like all shadowy and stuff. So we got something that was like, okay, that's somewhat close. My artist took that and used that as kind of the art style, or like the inspiration, like some of the shape and whatnot, for an original art piece that he did. And if you look at the art piece before, and like the AI art piece and the art piece that he did, his is totally original and awesome. But like I said, it basically takes place of sketching. So it's
Hmm.
like, do you want sketch 1, 2, 3, 4? Like I remember when we did our first, we call it the meddling imp. It's a little, little bad imp in our game. It's kind of like a goblin looking dude. We did like 12 different sketches, and we're like, which direction do you want to go? And the direction we wanted to go actually looked the most like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Wanted him to be cute and also a little bit dangerous, but also kind of silly looking. But he takes himself seriously. And so all of those sketches, we picked one and went in that direction and did varying sketches of something that would match that. And that process took maybe 40 hours of his time to make that one character. And then he had to color it and render it and whatnot. And now we get to save a lot of time. Well, first of all, it really helps that we know generally what our imps look like in our game. But it really helps to have that to like do quick sketching. And it's like, okay, what do you think about this style versus that style, and so on. And it's been very useful to have. But my artist wasn't trained on like he's not self-trained, self-taught. Like he went to art school. He has been an artist for, I mean, for me, he's been an artist for almost 6 years. And for like 5.5 years he's worked for me, either on a part-time or full-time basis. And he's had lots of clients before that for the last 10 years or more. He's been a freelance artist and has done a lot of different things. And he's clearly an expert. And when he uses Midjourney, there is like, it's just like amazing. The types of things he can do are incredible. If I use Midjourney, I think that my stuff is really cool until I see what he does. It's like, dang, I really am like untrained and trying to compensate for my lack of skill with this system. And if I were to make a game using art that I kind of, let's just say I had formulated from Midjourney, like fully AI art, you would totally be able to tell, and it would totally ruin my reputation as like somebody that can be trusted with art. So if I were to try to sell using art that I made, it wouldn't work. So the lesson is that AI, I feel like, is an excellent tool in the hands of a capable artist, but not somebody who is not is I can only, as in regard to my level of art skill, I can only appreciate good art. I can't make it, you know. So man, well, I know we're getting close to the end here, and we should wrap because we're going long, but
So I guess the moral of the story is to always seek to improve your skill set, gain new knowledge, read books, and this is going to impact your work. So, yeah. Well done for listening to this podcast and trying to level up your marketing skills.
Yes. Our voices are not powered by AI. Robot Richard, AI Robot Richard, send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.